we chatted before we started the interview, and you mentioned this backward training's been around for a while. Muhammad Ali was someone that you mentioned. So talk a little bit about this. I'll use the word backward training, but whatever your sort of terminology is for it. But tell me about Muhammad Ali and what he did to kind of kick the idea off.
Yeah, so Sugar Ray Leonard had come to him and said, you know, my knees are hurting. And Muhammad told him, not just for your knee health, but because your sport requires some backwards movement, you need to start running backwards like I've been doing. And to me, that resonates because, you know, I can listen to other coaches, I can listen to Cal or this guy Dino, but nothing resonates with me as an athlete more than seeing one of the greatest athletes promote something. So for Muhammad, that was the backwards movement. For somebody like Larry Bird, Kobe, Michael Jordan, they could all shoot very proficiently with their opposite hand. To me, that's where we need to be looking at as an athletic community. We shouldn't be looking at, okay, rate of force development is everything. Yes, it can tell us a lot, but just like a squat, it can only tell us so much. So we could have two athletes squatting 300 pounds, but one athlete is jumping 40 inches and running a 4.240, and the other one's jumping 20 inches and running a 5.440. So numbers alone don't tell the full tale. It's the whole story, everything that goes into it, and the backwards movement is just the tip of the iceberg. That's how I would get everybody started. Whether they're trying to be Muhammad Ali, or they're trying to be an NBA player, or if they're just trying to be pain-free playing with their kids, or pain-free just in general, the backwards movement. And now I've been doing it for 8 years without really science explaining it. You know, to me,
is that correct? Is science not necessarily caught up with some of these ideas that are being tested?
Yep, and it was a major United States university that had put out the no knees over toes in the 1970s.
Yeah, I was. Was that the Duke study in 78?
Well,
or is that another thing?
Yeah, yeah, it was the Duke study.
Why do you laugh?
Well, because if you look at it, you know, well, this is one of those things. Again, to me, it's one thing to read and study, but it has to make sense. So if we look at Duke's progression since the 78. Grant Hill, Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, all these guys, lower leg non-contact injuries. Okay, that to me says more than the study saying to not do it. The study saying not do it was because when they measured the force on the knees, it was greater when the knee goes over the toe, which, yes, that makes sense. But if you watch any sport, if you break down the film, most of the time you're moving, you're spending with your knee over the toe. So if you're not strong in that position, that's why we have an epidemic of injuries at every level. And the backwards movement is just the least evasive way we can do that because it's just concentric in nature. When we add resistance, we're not getting that eccentric taxing of the nervous system and the muscles. So you can recover from a backwards sled or a backwards walking workout in as little as 3 hours up to 24 hours. Whereas if you do something a little more triphasic, like Cal teaches, like a heavy accentuated squat, it's going to take at least 48 hours, and there's some people that believe it takes more than 72 hours to recover from that. So that's now, like, this is probably a little long-winded, but now we have Harvard coming on the back end as of last year saying that the backwards movement increases neural pathway connections. We have a motivational doc on YouTube he seems legitimate. He is now saying all these benefits of the going backwards. One of the things I heard was 30% increase in burning of calories versus going forward. But I always tie it back to Muhammad Ali, and then for the ones, you know,
What did he get it from then?
What's that?
What do you think he got it? How did he come
I
up
don't
with
know. I don't know. Somebody was smart enough, but we still haven't seen an athlete at that size move as light on their feet, you know, and all the money we put into research, you know, that tells me something. But a lot of people, if you reference a great athlete, they'll say, well, that's good for him. That's one of the greatest athletes of all time. How does that apply to me? And so that's when I pulled a study that was done 2 or 3 years ago with some of the top high school soccer players in America. For 12 or 16 weeks, they had the one group go forward only sprinting, and they had the one group go backwards only sprinting. At the end of the week, this is what they concluded. The backwards movers not only got faster sprinting backwards, which seems pretty obvious, they're working on it. They got faster going forwards in the forwards group, and they had 4 times the amount of increase in vertical over that span that the forwards group had. So that's, however science wants to explain that, that's great. It's probably for minds much greater than mine to explain. For me, I probably excel at not being too smart. It's just, okay, trial and error. The backwards movement, for me, I stuck with it because it felt good and it was working. It helped me get rid of I overcame a torn meniscus MCL in my right leg. I had Oscar Slaughter's. So that was the first real relief. You can floss it. I have these muscle floss bands, and I brought one here today. I can show you. You can floss the area. It's a form of blood flow restriction. It sends signals because you're cutting off the area, and then you're doing little movements. It's signaling to the brain that it needs blood. So when you take the bands off, 30, 60 seconds to go any longer, you risk blood clots, but then you take it off, and then the brain signals new blood. So you get this rush of new blood, which is great. Now, I have to remind people, this is like a lot of what we see in physical therapy. It is like a lateral modality. It may make you feel better momentarily, but it's not going to actually do any of the real healing. The real healing is going to be coming from the backwards movement and then strengthening under the knee.
What do you think, like, if you look at, I suppose, how we've developed and evolved,
Yep.
there's got to have been some reason for us to have done that, because it's clear that some of the things that we're doing, maybe we're not working in balance, I guess. There's probably this imbalance, and there's some reason that it sounds that it's beneficial to go backwards. You even reference, I was listening to some of your stuff, even older people, there's benefits for older people
Yep.
to do backwards training. So what do you think is, if you try to kind of guess, why do you think there's benefits for us as humans to kind of be training and developing, moving in the backwards direction?
Yeah, I think Harvard is starting to touch a base on it. I think there's something to be said about moving along in life without seeing where you're going.
Yeah.
So, with that, okay, it's no matter who starts it, whether it's a kid that just starts it or the top athlete in the world, there is going to be an adaptation phase where it's extremely uncomfortable because they haven't done it. Same with if we have the athlete that we want to bring up their opposite hand shooting, we'll start to have them do stuff around the house, whether it's writing or eating with their opposite hand. You'll see the frustration build up in their head. So there's something freeing about moving and not knowing exactly where you're going, but being confident that what you're doing is working. But then it could be maybe some type of way back. It could be maybe like a yard work, like they were tilling land or pulling soil and they were going backwards and with the machine. I don't know. Maybe also I've thought more realistically as a hunter and gatherer. It was explained to me that we weren't just nonstop sprinting. We were like stalking the prey for a long periods of time. So if we're walking forward for a long periods of time and that gets tiring and mundane, flipping over, going backwards to offset that, and then covering ground as you're stalking this animal. And then when they get tired, because they're not going backwards, you're just going forwards and backwards. You're staying essentially recharged, and then when it's time for them to get tired, that's when it seems like we were doing most of our explosive movement, whether it's throwing something at it or trying to catch it with our hands, and then that may be where that derives from.
Is there any animals that kind of successfully do that that you know of?
I haven't seen it. The internet is an amazing place. I'm sure that somebody that hears this will be like right away. They'll be like, "Oh, it's the so-and-so animal," but I haven't seen it. It's one of those things that I haven't seen that much of. But we also don't see non-contact leg injuries on animals until they're domesticated in houses with humans. You're not seeing animals laying on the side of the road because they tore an ACL or sprained their ankle. Same with the kids. There's a certain age. Now, I don't have kids. I have 10 nephews and nieces, so I'm able to kind of play with them and study them. There's up into 4, 5, 6 maybe, until they get that first injury or that first traumatic experience, whether it's emotional, mental, or whatever. They're super athletes. So I don't look just at what Muhammad Ali or Kobe Bryant was doing. I'm looking at what these kids are doing. Not only are they sitting on their knees for long periods of time, they'll jump off on top of a couch, land, and run around like it's nothing. And if we scale that, it's like us jumping off one of these beams and just landing and running. Well, we lose that ability over time. So what I focus on is just rebuilding that ability to be childlike and move pain-free. It's not the same focus as, okay, I'm pushing for the biggest verticals and the fastest 40s. Not that that's not a good goal to have. It's more of a metric than a goal, but providing value and getting people to move pain-free is the main goal. And everything else is metrics, whether it's the amount of followers, amount of views I'm doing, or who I'm working with. Those are more of the metrics. The goal remains the same. Help people get pain-free, because at 8 years old, I started to sprain my ankles. That turned into Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, and shin splints before I was 10. And my parents not being involved in sports, it was, you're gonna figure out these answers. So I create on social, and I deliver the messages to my athletes based off of what 8 and 9-year-old, basketball biology David would have needed. And that's, this basically the simplest way to put it,